I never thought I would find myself in this position, sitting in a dimly lit room, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and something else, something metallic. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second echoing in my mind like a countdown to an inevitable conclusion. I was here to confess, to unburden myself of the weight I had carried for far too long. But as I sat across from the detective, I realized that this was not just a confession, it was a reckoning. It all began 2 years ago, in a small town that seemed to exist outside of time. I had moved there seeking solace, a place to escape the chaos of my life. The townsfolk were friendly enough, but there was an undercurrent of something darker, something that whispered beneath the surface. I found a small apartment above a quaint bookstore, the kind that smelled of old paper and secrets. It was there that I first met her, Clara. Clara was a local artist, her paintings vibrant and full of life. We quickly became friends, bonding over our shared love for the arts and our mutual desire to escape our pasts. But as I spent more time with her, I began to notice the shadows that lingered in her eyes. She spoke of her childhood in hushed tones, of a family that had never understood her, of a father who had been a tyrant. I listened, offering comfort, but I could sense that there was more to her story, something she was afraid to reveal. One evening, as we sat in her studio surrounded by canvases, she finally opened up. "There's something I need to show you," she said, her voice trembling. I followed her to a hidden room at the back of the studio, a place filled with her unfinished works. But it wasn't the paintings that caught my attention, it was the wall covered in photographs. Each image depicted a different person, their faces twisted in fear, their eyes wide with terror. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Clara, what is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're my muses," she replied, her gaze distant. "I capture their essence before I paint them. But sometimes, it's not enough. Sometimes, I need to know them more intimately." I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but I was too intrigued to pull away. Clara's obsession with her art began to consume her, and I found myself drawn into her world. She would take me on late-night drives, searching for inspiration in the shadows of the town. It was during one of these excursions that we stumbled upon an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The windows were boarded up, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. "Let's go inside," Clara said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. I hesitated, but the thrill of adventure was too enticing. We pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the darkness. The air was stale, and the floorboards groaned beneath our weight. As we explored the house, I felt a sense of unease settle over me. Clara seemed to thrive in the gloom, her laughter echoing off the walls as she darted from room to room. But then we found it, a small room at the back, filled with remnants of a life long forgotten. Old furniture, dusty photographs, and a strange collection of trinkets. In the center of the room stood a mirror, its surface cracked and tarnished. Clara approached it, her fingers tracing the edges. "This is where it all began," she murmured. "What do you mean?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she turned to me, her expression shifting from excitement to something darker. "I need you to help me," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I need to capture something real." Before I could respond, she lunged for the mirror, her hands gripping the frame as if it were a lifeline. I watched in horror as her reflection twisted and warped, her features contorting into something unrecognizable. "Clara!" I shouted, but it was too late. The mirror seemed to pulse with a life of its own, drawing her in. I reached for her, but a force pushed me back, slamming me against the wall. I could only watch as Clara vanished into the glass, her screams echoing in my mind. The mirror returned to its stillness, and I was left alone in the room, the weight of her absence pressing down on me. I stumbled out of the house, my heart racing. I didn't know what had just happened, but I knew I had to leave. I packed my things and fled the town, hoping to escape the memories that haunted me. But no matter how far I drove, Clara's face lingered in my mind, her laughter echoing like a ghost. I tried to convince myself that it was just a nightmare, a figment of my imagination. Yet, the truth was far more sinister. Months passed, and I settled into a new life in a different city, but the shadows of my past refused to fade. I found myself drawn to art galleries, seeking solace in the beauty of others' creations. It was during one of these visits that I stumbled upon a painting that stopped me in my tracks. It was a portrait of Clara, her eyes filled with a haunting sadness that seemed to reach out to me. The artist, a woman named Evelyn, stood nearby, watching me with an intensity that made me uneasy. "Do you know her?" Evelyn asked, her voice low and melodic. I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. I used to, I finally admitted, my heart racing. She was a friend. Evelyn's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "She was a brilliant artist," she said, her tone almost reverent. "But she disappeared. No one knows what happened to her." The word struck me like a physical blow. I had thought I was the only one left with memories of Clara, but here was someone who had felt her absence too. I was with her when she vanished, I confessed, the weight of my guilt crashing over me. "I don't know what happened. I tried to save her." Evelyn studied me closely, her eyes narrowing. "You're not the first to seek her out," she said slowly. "There are others who have tried to find her, to understand what happened. But they never come back." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" "There's a legend about Clara," Evelyn continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They say she was more than just an artist. She had a gift, a way of capturing souls in her work. But it came at a price. Those who sought her out were drawn into her world, never to return." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The memories of that night flooded back, the way Clara had looked at the mirror, the way she had seemed to transform before my eyes. "I need to find her," I said, my voice trembling. "I need to know what happened." Evelyn's expression softened, but there was a warning in her eyes. "Be careful. The line between art and obsession is thin. If you seek her out again, you may not like what you find." Despite her warning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to return to the town, to confront the past that had haunted me for so long. I spent the next few days preparing, gathering supplies and researching Clara's life. I learned about her family, her struggles, and the darkness that had surrounded her. Each piece of information only deepened my resolve. When I finally returned to the town, it felt like stepping into a time capsule. The streets were eerily quiet, the familiar sights now tinged with a sense of foreboding. I made my way to Clara's studio, my heart pounding in my chest. The door creaked open, revealing the same dusty interior I had left behind. But something was different, there was a palpable energy in the air, a tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I stepped inside, my breath hitching as I took in the sight of the photographs still lining the walls. But now, they seemed to pulse with life, the faces staring back at me with an intensity that made me shiver. I approached the mirror, my heart racing. It was just as I remembered, cracked and tarnished, but now it seemed to hum with a low, almost seductive sound. "Clara!" I called out, my voice trembling. "Are you here?" Silence answered me, but I could feel her presence, a weight in the air that pressed down on me. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the surface of the mirror. The moment I made contact, a jolt of energy surged through me, and I was pulled into a vision, a whirlwind of colors and sounds, a cacophony of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I saw Clara, her face twisted in anguish, surrounded by the very people from the photographs. They were trapped, their eyes pleading for release. I felt their fear, their desperation, and I realized with horror that they were not just muses, they were victims, captured by Clara's insatiable need for inspiration. "No!" I screamed, pulling my hand away from the mirror. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. The truth hit me like a freight train. Clara had not just vanished, she had become a part of her art, a collector of souls, and I was standing at the precipice of her dark legacy. The realization sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt the walls of the studio closing in around me. I had to escape, to break free from this nightmare, but the mirror seemed to call to me, its surface rippling like water, beckoning me to return. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping me inside. Panic surged through me as I pounded on the door, my heart racing. "Clara! Let me out!" I shouted, but my voice echoed back at me, swallowed by the oppressive silence. I was alone, and the weight of the room pressed down on me like a vice. In that moment of desperation, I remembered Evelyn's warning. I had to confront Clara, but I needed to do it on my terms. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. I needed to think clearly. I scanned the room, searching for something, anything, that could help me understand what had happened to Clara and how to free her from this torment. My eyes fell on the photographs lining the walls. Each face was a reminder of the lives Clara had taken, the souls she had captured in her relentless pursuit of perfection. I stepped closer, studying the images. They were not just portraits, they were windows into their lives, their fears, their dreams. I felt a strange connection to them, as if they were reaching out to me, begging for release. "Clara," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I know you're here. I want to help you. But you have to let them go." The air in the room shifted, and I felt a cold breeze brush against my skin. The mirror began to shimmer, and I could see Clara's reflection emerging from the depths. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of pain and longing. "You shouldn't have come back," she said, her voice echoing as if it were coming from a great distance. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I do understand," I replied, my heart pounding. "You're trapped in this cycle, Clara. You don't have to keep doing this. Let them go, and you can be free." Her expression darkened, and I could see the shadows of the people behind her, their faces twisted in anguish. "They are my art," she said, her voice rising in intensity. "Without them, I am nothing. I need their fear, their pain. It's what fuels me." "No," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "You're not just an artist, you're a person. You can choose to break free from this. You can choose to let them go." For a moment, Clara hesitated, her gaze flickering between me and the mirror. I could see the conflict within her, the struggle between her desire for freedom and her obsession with her art. "You don't know what it's like," she said, her voice softening. "I thought I could control it, but it consumed me. I can't escape it." "Then let me help you," I pleaded. "We can find a way together. You don't have to be alone in this." The mirror pulsed with energy, and I felt a surge of power coursing through me. I reached out, my hand hovering over the surface. "Clara, take my hand. We can break this cycle. We can free them." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might agree. But then the shadows behind her surged forward, their faces contorted in rage. "No," they screamed in unison, their voices a cacophony of despair. "You cannot take her from us." The force of their anger slammed into me, knocking me back against the wall. I gasped for breath, struggling to regain my footing. Clara's expression shifted, and I could see the fear in her eyes. "You have to go," she cried, her voice breaking. "You can't save me." "I won't leave you," I shouted, but the shadows were closing in, their hands reaching for me, pulling me toward the mirror. I felt their cold fingers wrap around my wrists, dragging me closer to the glass. Panic surged through me as I fought against their grip, but it was no use. I was being pulled into the depths of the mirror, into the darkness that had consumed Clara. In that moment of despair, I remembered the photographs, the faces of those who had been lost. I focused on them, on their stories, their lives. "I won't let you take me," I screamed, channeling all my energy into breaking free. "You don't own me." With a surge of determination, I broke free from their grasp, stumbling back as the shadows recoiled. Clara's reflection flickered, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. "Please, you have to go," she cried, her voice filled with anguish. "If you stay, you'll become one of them." "No," I shouted back, my heart racing. "I won't abandon you. We can fight this together." I could feel the energy of the mirror pulsing around me, a chaotic blend of fear and desperation. The shadows writhed, their forms shifting and twisting, but I refused to let them take me. I had to reach Clara. I took a step closer to the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. "Clara, listen to me. You're stronger than this. You can break free." I could see her wavering, the flicker of hope in her eyes battling against the darkness that surrounded her. But the shadows surged forward again, their voices rising in a cacophony of rage. "You cannot save her. She belongs to us," they screamed, their hands reaching out, trying to pull me into the depths of the mirror. I felt the cold grip of their fingers wrap around my arms, but I fought against them, summoning every ounce of strength I had left. "Clara," I called out, my voice echoing in the chaos. "You have to fight. Remember who you are. You're an artist, not a monster." For a moment, the shadows hesitated, their grip loosening as Clara's gaze locked onto mine. I could see the flicker of recognition in her eyes, the spark of the person I had once known. I don't want this," she whispered, her voice trembling. But I can't let them go. They're all I have left. Then let me help you. I pleaded, my heart aching for her. We can find a way to release them together. You don't have to be alone in this. The shadows recoiled, their forms twisting in anger. You will pay for this, they hissed, their voices a chorus of fury. You cannot take her from us. I felt the energy in the room shift, a palpable tension that threatened to consume me. But I refused to back down. I focused on Clara, on the bond we had shared, the friendship that had once brought us together. Clara, you are not defined by your past. You can choose to let them go. You can choose to be free. The mirror pulsed again, and I could see Clara's reflection flickering, her features shifting between the artist I knew and the tortured soul she had become. I don't know if I can, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, you can. I urged, stepping closer to the mirror. You have the power to break this cycle. You just have to believe in yourself. With a surge of determination, I reached out, my hand pressing against the surface of the mirror. The moment my skin made contact, a shockwave of energy coursed through me, and I felt the connection between us strengthen. I could see the faces of the lost souls behind Clara, their eyes filled with fear and longing. You are not alone. I shouted, my voice echoing in the chaos. We are all here for you. The shadows writhed in fury, their forms twisting and contorting as they fought against the bond we were creating. You cannot save her, they screamed, their voices a cacophony of despair. She belongs to us. But I could feel Clara's presence growing stronger, her spirit pushing back against the darkness. I won't let you take me, she cried, her voice rising in defiance. I choose to be free. With that declaration, the mirror erupted in a blinding light, and I felt the energy surge around us, a whirlwind of colors and emotions. The shadows shrieked in rage, their forms dissolving into the light as Clara's reflection began to solidify. I could see her clearly now, her features illuminated by the brilliance surrounding us. Clara! I shouted, my heart racing. Take my hand. We can break this together. She reached out, her fingers brushing against mine, and in that moment, I felt a surge of power unlike anything I had ever experienced. The light enveloped us, and I could see the faces of the lost souls behind her, their expressions shifting from fear to hope. Thank you, they whispered, their voices a chorus of gratitude. As the light intensified, I felt the shadows dissipate, their hold on Clara weakening. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought I could control it. You don't have to apologize, I replied, my voice steady. We all make mistakes. What matters is that you're choosing to fight back. With a final surge of energy, the light exploded outward, shattering the mirror into 1,000 pieces. The room filled with a brilliant radiance, and I felt the weight of the darkness lift as the shadows dissolved into nothingness. Clara and I were thrown backward, landing on the floor of the studio as the remnants of the mirror scattered around us like shards of glass. I blinked against the brightness, disoriented but alive. As the light faded, I looked around the room, my heart racing. The photographs that had once lined the walls were gone, replaced by a sense of calm that filled the air. Clara lay beside me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Did we do it? She asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, tears of relief streaming down my face. We did. You're free, Clara. We both are. She sat up slowly, her expression shifting from confusion to joy. I can feel it, she whispered, her hands trembling. The weight is gone. I can finally breathe. But as I looked around the studio, a sense of unease crept back in. What about the others? I asked, my heart sinking. The souls you captured, are they really free? Clara's expression darkened, and I could see the pain in her eyes. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could save them, but I was too consumed by my own darkness. Just then, a soft sound broke the silence, a gentle whisper that seemed to echo in the air. I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a woman with a serene expression and a warm smile. You have done well, she said, her voice soothing. You have freed Clara from her torment. Who are you? I asked, my heart racing. What happened to the others? I am a guide, she replied, her gaze steady. The souls you seek are not lost. They have been released from Clara's grasp, but they must find their own way to the light. You have given them hope. Clara's eyes widened, and she reached out to the woman. Can I see them? Can I help them? The guide shook her head gently. They must choose their own path. You have done enough. It is time for you to heal. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but a lingering sadness remained. What about us? I asked, glancing at Clara. What do we do now? The guide smiled softly. You have both been given a second chance. Embrace it. Create art that brings joy, not fear. Use your experiences to inspire others. As she spoke, the room began to shimmer, the light enveloping us once more. I felt a sense of warmth and comfort, as if the weight of the past was finally lifting. Thank you, I whispered, my heart swelling with gratitude. The guide nodded, her form beginning to fade. Remember, the power of creation lies within you. Use it wisely. With that, the light enveloped us completely, and I felt myself being pulled away from the studio, from the darkness that had once consumed us. When the light finally faded, I found myself standing in a sunlit park, the sounds of laughter and joy surrounding me. Clara stood beside me, her expression filled with wonder. We're free, she said, her voice filled with disbelief. We really did it. I nodded, tears of joy streaming down my face. Yes, we did. And now we can start anew. As we walked through the park, I felt a sense of hope blossoming within me. The shadows of the past had been vanquished, and the future lay before us, bright and full of possibilities. Clara and I exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between us. We had faced the darkness together, and now we would embrace the light. But as we continued to walk, I couldn't shake the feeling that the echoes of our past would always linger, a reminder of the choices we had made and the lives we had touched. I glanced back at the park, the shadows of the studio fading into memory, and I knew that while we had escaped the darkness, the journey of healing had only just begun. And in that moment, I realized that the true power of art lay not in capturing fear, but in celebrating life. Clara and I would create together, using our experiences to inspire others, to bring light to the shadows that lingered in the corners of the world. We would honor the souls we had lost, and in doing so, we would find our own redemption. As we stepped into the future, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The past would always be a part of us, but it would no longer define us. We were free, and together, we would create a new story, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.